Oh, hey, you, how are you? How the flip are you, mate? Oh, man, I love seeing your face every time. You're just so good looking. You are so damn good looking. I hope you know that. So, lately, I've just noticed that more and more people have been asking me about my relationships because I got two partners, and for lots of different reasons, it's probably the best relationship I've ever been in. I've never been more secure. I've never felt I've never had so much certainty that my life is just going to go up and up and up. You know, I've never had so much fun. I've never felt so secure in myself as a man, and so many things. And to be honest, it's got nothing to do with how many partners I have. It's just, I feel like maybe I've figured out how best to organize my relationships. And so, people have asked, how do you do it? How do you even blah, blah, blah? And I'm about to tell you. So, first up, there's a few parts I've taken notes on. The first part is respect and growth. The next part is communication. And the final bit is covering probably everyone's favorite question is jealousy. And people ask me that in one way or another, but basically they're all asking me, how do you do that? Aren't you jealous? Is one more important than the other? Blah, blah, blah. All that sort of, it's rubbish, really. But I think by the end of it, by the time I get to that part of the video, I think you'll be able to see exactly why it's a load of rubbish and why it's irrelevant. So, respect and growth. Respect is probably, I think, the most important part of any relationship, be it a romantic relationship or a friendship, platonic relationship, a business relationship, any of those sort of things. There are ways that you can, not have respect for someone, and you can manipulate the situation to work in your favor. But A, in the long term, it usually fails. And B, it'll just wear you down. Like, you've got to think of every little thing. Fuck that. That's too much work. I'd rather not manipulate people and just respect them, respect their intelligence, and respect all. Anyway, so first thing is you've got to respect them. You've got to respect them as a person, respect them as a human, respect them as someone who knows what they know, who may experience things differently to you. Respect that. Also respect the relationship. Now, in order to respect the relationship, you've got to have some sort of standards for the relationship. You've got to have something to aspire towards, and want to grow the relationship, want it to be more than what it is. And I think if you respect your relationship enough to keep aiming to grow it and grow it and grow it, then I think you're onto a good thing. Also, to respect yourself. Now, the reason why you have to respect yourself is because, how do I put this? You want to have standards for yourself, and you want those standards to forever grow. So once you've reached a certain level, there's now a new level that you can achieve, that you can reach up to. And you should do that because you don't want to be mediocre. If you want to be average, you'll get average results. Be that in business, be that in relationships, be that in whatever, right? For example, if you had a child, you wouldn't settle, you wouldn't settle to just give them love once or twice and then expect them to think that, oh, I'm loved. Like, they never show me love, but I know it because they showed it to me that one time. No, you'd constantly give them hugs and listen to their stupid stories and whatever else. You know, you'd want to constantly build upon what sort of what your relationship is with that child as time goes on, because as they grow, their needs are going to grow, and as their needs grow, your approach needs to grow as well and change and adapt. For example, when they're young, what they're going to communicate with you and ask you about and all that is going to be different to when they're a teenager, right? And you're going to need to adapt to that. And in the same way, as you both grow in a relationship, in a romantic relationship, things are going to change, and you're going to have to be there right next to them. And if they need you, you're there for them. And in order for you to be there for them, you need to grow yourself, right? And you can't just be the same person you were 10 years ago. You know, you've actually got to develop yourself and become a more and more decent human being, a more and more intelligent human being, and a more and more socially aware human being, someone who's able to communicate better and better, who wants to learn about new communication skills because you respect the relationship so much and you want it to last. And you'd never want to be in a situation where you can't figure out what they're trying to open up to you about, and vice versa. And everything I say is two ways. It's everything I say, there is a duality to it where it applies to both parties, or however many people are in the relationship, right? It applies to everyone, not just you. So they need to be able to respect you and respect the relationship enough that they want it to last. And in order to make it last, they have to want to grow themselves and become the best version of themselves that they can be, so that they can contribute. And not only are they contributing, they may not even just contribute in the obvious ways, but in a less obvious way. For example, if you are growing, that encourages your partner to grow. See, I share little tidbits of what I'm learning with my partners, and kind of unconsciously, that shares with them, without me needing to directly say it, that I respect growth, and that if they come across something to do with personal growth, I want to hear about that too, because it's something that I respect and that I love hearing about. So if you find something, let me know, because I love it, right? And it's the same with anyone, but in this case, we're talking about partners, aren't we? And so whenever they share something with me that is to do with growth, I kind of grow respect for them, because I learn that that's what they're doing too. They're looking into these things as well, and I respect them more. I've got a favorite analogy as well, because I remember I've had partners that talk themselves down, and it really, really, really got to me. It really pissed me off, to be honest. It didn't annoy me, it pissed me off. And it didn't piss me off because they have a bad self-image. Like, that annoyed me too. That annoyed me. But what actually pissed me off was the fact that they were insulting something that I deeply love, something that I'm passionate about, something that I really care about. They're just talking it down, you know? I remember another time in my life, like, a lot of you guys who know me well, even guys who don't know me well, they know about this stuff here, this subwoofer business, this audio. See that big old, oh, that's a big sub. That thing there, man, I love, love, love audio. I am passionate about it. And I'm passionate about all aspects of it. I'm not particularly passionate about just being obscenely loud. However, I'm obscenely loud as well. I have a very loud sound system. As far as I know the records show, I have the loudest work vehicle that is used every day for work in Australia in terms of subwoofers. I love that stuff. I'm passionate about that stuff. And one day, someone said to me, your sound system is how loud? That's actually stupid. Like, you're actually retarded. You're actually, that's obscene. Why would you do that? Why would you build something like that? What is the point? Like, I just don't understand how stupid you must be to do. And I'm like, excuse me? Do you know how many thousands of dollars I've spent on this thing? How many thousands of hours I've spent on the whole system trying to get it just right, the way I like it, because I love it? I'm not doing it to show off to other people. I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it because I love it. I'm not doing it for the adoration of other people. I'm doing it because I'm passionate about audio and about all this sort of stuff. And you're coming to me and you're telling me that it's stupid? How dare you? And in the same way, my partner talking down about herself. How dare you? How dare you talk about one of my favorite things in the world in that way? I'm deeply offended. I was deeply, deeply offended by that. How dare they do that? In the same way, and to me it was like, you're disrespecting me. You're disrespecting me for caring about you. Because you're saying I'm wasting my time and that it's stupid and that how dare I, like, oh, you're an idiot. You're an idiot for trying to, for liking that thing. That's how I feel. Like, how dare you tell me that you're a piece of shit? Do you know what I mean? How dare you? And I mean, look, there are moments. We all have our moments, right? But this was her default setting and it just really rubbed me up the wrong way. And, I can respect when we're just having a mood and we can talk our way out of it and all that sort of stuff. And, you're right, I'm not stupid, I'm not this, I'm not that. You know what I mean? Like, I get that, but you get my point. And that's why self-respect in a relationship is so important to me. And this is all my opinion, and this is all just my grasp on it, you know what I mean? And that's it. Okay, so that's respect and growth, and that's why it's so important to constantly have the motive, like, at least over the long haul, you've got that respect for yourself, respect for the relationship, and respect for your partner, that you're going to want these things. Now, the next point is communication. Why is communication so important? I'll tell you why. It's because the alternative to communication is reading minds. Now, we're not actually capable of reading minds. We don't have telekinetic powers and all this sort of stuff. I wish we did, but we don't, right? So we have to use our mouth noises to do this. The dangers of mind reading is that it compounds over time. And what that means is that if you try to read someone's mind and you're just 10% inaccurate, it's not a big deal, right? You get the gist of it. But then something else happens and you try to read their mind and try and figure out why the hell did they do that? And then you might make another assumption that's based off the previous assumption. And you might be 10% inaccurate. But now it's 11% inaccurate because it compounds, it adds, And then so on and so forth. And then all these tiny little assumptions, all these tiny little telekinetic mind reading bullshit that you're doing, it all adds up. Even no matter how small it is. And then eventually, you know what, you don't even know the person. And you say, I don't even know who you are anymore. You've changed so much to the person that I first met, which is incorrect. It's flat out incorrect. It's bullshit, and it's unfair, and it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to try to read someone's mind, you know? It's just flat out wrong, and you shouldn't do it. So, you know, that's the dangers of mind reading. And if you think back, I'm sure you can picture a whole slew of relationships that have ended, whether they're yours or someone else's, where mind reading has been the main culprit to all of this sort of stuff. So don't do it. So communication. What's the best way to communicate? Well, first of all, you should communicate about everything, every little thing, because what it does is it even if it's a small thing, even if it's a little thought that's popped in your head, it adds context to every future conversation that you have with them, right? So if you bring something up later down, if you say this one thing that happened to you today at work, and then you bring something up that happened to you in a week's time, your partner can then go, oh yeah, that you were saying something about that last week, weren't you? Yeah, you know what I mean? It just adds that context to it. So it's always good to communicate and enjoy the conversations that you have. Enjoy the connection that you're creating with your partner by communicating. So how do you do it though when it comes to difficult conversations? Let me tell you about my experience with difficult conversations. I used to be terrible. I'm still not the best, but I'm so much better than I used to be. So difficult conversations, I was so insecure about difficult conversations that the only way that I could get the balls to do it is, what I would do is I would become basically kind of like a army drill sergeant and say, all right, you're doing this, I'm doing this, and we're clashing in the middle, and it's not okay. What are we going to do about it? You know? Because the only way that I could have the balls to say anything is to dominate and take control and try and, you know, put out this energy. And it's incredibly beta. It's so beta. It's weak, right? But that's what I was doing because I just didn't know how to talk, how to communicate with my own partner, right? And it caused problems. Instead, try to come from a place of love, of collaboration, right? Think to yourself, I love this person and I want to build something with them. I want to build this relationship up, and I don't care if they're right or I'm right. It's irrelevant, actually. If my only goal is to create a better relationship with this person, right? And I'm doing it because I love them, not because I want to take control over them or anything like that, just because I love them. That's it. It's just about love, right? And when you do that, instead of saying, you're here, I'm here, I don't like it, we're clashing, what do we do about it? It's like, instead, without even meaning to, your entire language, your body language, everything changes. And instead of that, it's, hey, there's, I just want to have a chat about something like, when you do this, it clashes with me a bit because I do this. And I really don't like it. I just want us to be the strongest version of ourselves, the strongest couple that we can be. And I don't know, let's work together to figure that out. You see, it's like a whole different paradigm. It's working together. And naturally, what's their response going to be? They're like, oh, they want to work with me. Yeah, I want to work with them too. What they're saying makes sense. I want to have a really good relationship with this person. I want to work with them. I want to work together and be a stronger couple. Right? Of course they are. What happens if I come at them the first way? Well, they're going to get, I'm being on the offense. So naturally, they're going to be on the defense. And they're going to start bringing up shit that's irrelevant to what we're talking about. So, how do you bring up topics to talk about? Because you need to communicate things. Even if it's a smallest little thing, you've got to speak up. Even if it's the way they stack the dishwasher, or they're not doing this or not doing that. How do you have that open dialogue? Well, first of all, have a think about it and see if you can oversimplify it down to a really basic summary that you can say in a couple of minutes at the most. Like a lot of things you can say, you can summarize down to less than 1 minute, right? Honestly. And then just get through it, say it. It makes it easier for you as well because you're not stumbling over all the details. You're just saying the point of the conversation, right? Then you have a conversation with them. Hopefully they're just listening to you. And then you ask them, does that make sense? To try and see if they understand what you're saying. Because there's no point in you just talking at them, and they're just nodding like you're in a trance, like, and then eventually they're like, and then they walk away the next day like, wait a minute, he was just talking at me. He didn't let me have the chance to speak. So you ask them, do you understand? And if they don't understand, then you clarify. If they do understand, you move on to the next step. And then you might go into the details and say, all those little nuanced points that make it a real problem, right? And from there, you can then figure out how to meet in the middle. Be willing to, and when you're listening, you keep your mouth shut and you just listen and you try and, instead of trying to think of it from your perspective is irrelevant when they're explaining their side. You need to think of it from their perspective, right? Because they're the one who's saying it. They're the one who's bringing up what they're talking about, right? Your perspective is irrelevant at this point when they're talking back to you. And then eventually you can understand what they're saying, and from there you can actually find a solution to whatever it is that you need a solution to. Now, sometimes things will come up that don't look like they have, any relevance to what your initial point is. So what's really important there, so you don't get sidetracked, because staying on point is the most important thing when it comes to these sort of conversations, and it can be really hard, especially once emotions start bubbling up and all that sort of stuff, is if it's irrelevant, write it down, actually physically write it down and say, at the end of this, we can go over these sorts of things. Because what you'll find is, if they are a little bit relevant, then when you by the time you finish, everything else makes sense. Sometimes everything else just falls into place. If it doesn't, then you're still respecting them enough to be able to have the conversation, because they brought it up because it means something to them. Maybe it's just because they're in the moment and they're kind of emotional, but by honoring them and being willing to bring it up once you've finished with this topic, then you're showing that you respect them, which is coming back to the first point, that you respect what they have to say and their feelings, their emotions, their thoughts, and all that sort of stuff, right? What else have I written down? Also understand that every person's different and there's a different way to communicate for every single person. I've got relationships like friendships and all that sort of thing where my favorite ones are the ones I can be as blunt as possible, and they know I'm not doing it to be a dick. I'm doing it because it saves time, it gets to the point, and all of that sort of stuff, right? I've got other friends who I can be really blunt with, as long as I preface it with something like, hey man, it's going to sound offensive, but I don't mean it that way. I just don't know how else to word it, so just stick with me and we can like clarify at the end. And I've got other friends who just don't have the capability to take blunt information. I have to like make it all like fluffy and pillowy and soft and all that sort of stuff. And those are the most difficult conversations, because they're usually the type of person who's ready, who's looking to be offended, who's waiting for that moment where I'm going to say the thing that's offensive, so that they can say the thing. They don't mean to, but it just kind of happens because of whatever trauma they've had in the past. They've had to be defensive. So know that every single conversation you have is different, and you have to tailor it and customize it for each person so that it's tactful, so that it's direct as possible, and elegant. An elegant solution is something that is the simplest solution and the most effective solution. And you want your communication to be as elegant as possible. It's really tricky to do that. The other thing is that the more you communicate and the more you talk about these things, especially the little ones, not just the big ones. If you just save up your communication for the big ones, you're going to have a hard time. Because when you talk about even the little things that bother you, hey, can you just pick up your clothes, or can you not talk about that particular topic in front of those friends because they're a bit weird or something? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of things. It becomes normal. And the first difficult conversation you ever have with your partners or partner or whatever, it's going to be hard, because it feels like you're about to jump out of a plane. You get that anxiety, you get that fear. What if they take this the wrong way? Well, the reality is if they take it the wrong way, then you just have to talk. You have to talk it out. You have to let them speak, and then, show that you understand them. Maybe say, so what you're saying is X, Y, and Z, right? And so that they feel understood, and then, keep communicating until you understand each other's points. Even if they contradict each other, even if they are very different, right? Both sides are expecting different things or seeing different things. You still need to be able to understand what they're saying in order to meet in the middle. You can't expect them to meet you in the middle if everything you're saying doesn't make sense to them, because you're not letting them speak, they're not letting you speak, and vice versa. You just need to listen to each other. And once that becomes normal, then guess what? It'll be effortless. It's like those skydivers that you see them like jump out backwards out of planes and stuff. Meanwhile, I'll be like ghostly white. All the tan will drain out of my face, and my heart will be pounding. I'll feel like I'm about to die. And I am terrified about jumping out of planes. I am worried about that, because I probably should do it sometime. But after a while, it becomes normal. It becomes normal. And it doesn't mean that every single conversation is going to be easy. You're still probably going to have that fear. But you know what? It's going to be easier the more you do it. So the last point is jealousy. So we've covered respect and growth, communication, and finally jealousy. Well, jealousy, first of all, jealousy comes up from time to time. It's just sort of a fact of life, a fact of relationships. It happens, right? But hopefully, it doesn't happen often, and it's very short term. And it's short term because they understand you, because you've talked about yourself, your life experiences and everything enough so that they understand who you are. And they might see you chatting with someone, and their first instinct might be, oh, they're flirting. I don't feel comfortable with that. And then after a while, they're like, oh, wait, no, it's Chris, it's fine, right? So it's a short-term jealousy. And if they do feel jealous, they feel comfortable bringing it up. So back to communication, right? But it doesn't belong in a relationship. Flat out. Jealousy never belongs in a relationship. There are lots of other things that don't belong in a relationship, and jealousy is one of them. Ever. Like in terms of like a long-term thing that happens every time on a consistent basis. And there are situations that you just have to avoid because of jealousy. And you don't want them to feel jealous and vice versa and all that sort of stuff. Again, I want to hammer home the duality of this. Everything I'm saying needs to happen from all parties of this relationship. Not just you, not just them. And I know as a man, it's very easy for my ego to start firing up and for me to start pointing out everyone else's flaws. But I need to be able to take it too. And I need my partner to be able to communicate my flaws with me as well, because they respect me and they know that I want to grow as a human being, and I need them to help me grow by pointing out my flaws. That's part of respect. That's part of respecting that we need to grow as a couple and as individuals as well. So jealousy doesn't belong in a relationship, and it always comes from insecurities. Insecurities are the root cause of jealousy. And so there's two places that the insecurity can come from. It's either from you or it's from them. If it's from you, I'll give you an example. Some people are just looking for things to be insecure about. They've had so many, as an example, they might have had so many bad relationships in the past that they're waiting for that moment again. They're waiting for that partner to cheat. They're waiting for that partner to do what every other partner's done to them. And then their brain will be find some comfort that they're now not having to wait. They're not on edge anymore. They don't have to, wait for the bad thing to happen because they've spotted it from a mile away, right? And their brain is looking for it. That's not healthy, and that's not the way relationships should be. Because that's going to make your partner feel on edge, and it's going to make your partner question everything they do. Like, they'll hug a female if they're a dude or whatever. They'll give someone a hug, and then they'll be like, "Oh no, is my partner watching me? I don't want them to think that this means anything. It's just me saying hello or goodbye or something." You know what I mean? It's going to throw them in their head, and it might even make them think about cheating, not about doing it, just about being aware of cheating. And if they're constantly aware of cheating, it might put them into some situations that they don't want to be in that might lead to cheating. It sounds counterintuitive, but that's kind of the way the brain works. You can't not look for something. You have to actually think of the thing in order to be aware of it so that you can consciously not look for the thing. I've said this in a million other videos as well. So that's how your insecurities can rub off on other people. The other thing is, if it's them, if it's you, you've got to sort your shit out. If you respect the relationship enough, then you'll realize how much of an impact you're making by not sorting out your insecurities, right? And you'll do whatever it takes to solve that. And for example, if you're maybe you'll sacrifice, instead of watching 3 Netflix, however many Netflix videos you watch every night, you'll stop watching one to watch a self-development video that helps you release your insecurities. Or maybe you get Audible and start listening to audiobooks on self-development that might help. If you've got any questions about that, let me know. I've listen to heaps of those things. Or maybe you read articles on it and you do your research and you sacrifice time because you respect the relationship and value the relationship so much that you're willing to sacrifice watching a bit of Netflix, for example, or sacrifice listening to your favorite music while you're working to listen to maybe some audiobook or a YouTube video. You can hit play and then put it in your pocket and just listen to it or whatever on your headphones or whatever. You're going to find a way. You're going to get creative and you're going to find a way to get more content into your brain that's going to help you be less insecure, right? If it's them though, you have two options. You communicate and you talk about it so that you can solve it, so that you can understand why they're doing it, or maybe it's just a misunderstanding and you have nothing to worry about, or whatever it might be, or you leave them, because I don't think anyone should ever be ashamed of being in a relationship, but the only reason why you should feel shame is if there was action to take that you knew very clearly that you needed to do, like have a difficult conversation, like leave them, like whatever, and you didn't do it. You just sort of were too afraid to do it. You shouldn't be ashamed of wasting your time with someone, but it's really weak to not take the step. And I say that from someone who is weak at times and has been incredibly weak in my past. And I can't help it, but I've made it a priority to change that. So either talk about it and sort it out. If you guys keep talking about it and no change happens, whether it means that you have to change or they have to change, but no change happens, then you know what? If no change happens, you got to leave them. It's that simple. Like, why be miserable? Why do you want to make yourself miserable? Once you're conscious of this, maybe it's a bit easier to do it, but sometimes you don't even think about it. You think, oh yeah, we've talked about it, so it's going to be solved, which can be a load of bullshit sometimes, But a lot of people will choose the third option. The third option being that they'll just stay with the person. And if they this is the worst for people who are really loving and caring. It tends to be the worst for, but some people will be like, oh, maybe there's something I can do. Maybe if I'm nicer to them, maybe if I spend more money on them, maybe if I take them on more dates, maybe if I buy them wine or donuts or whatever, they'll love me more and they'll stop cheating on me, or they'll stop flirting, or maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I need to be enough. Maybe if I get a new job or something, I'll be enough and they'll want me, or whatever that might be. But all it really does, if it's not them, if they need to make a change and you're trying to do it for them, all you're doing is trying to manipulate them, trying to do these little things to massage them in such a way that they're going to change, right? And it's not very nice to do that. And what it actually does is it breeds narcissism in that partner. It breeds narcissism in that partner, because every time they do something wrong, you do something to make them like you, right? You do a nice thing for them. You become extra nice. You become extra touchy-feely because maybe that'll make them like you more, or whatever, It's unhealthy. It's really unhealthy. So you've either got to sort the problem out, give them plenty of time to sort it out, or just leave them, because otherwise you're going to make the situation worse, right? If you take on all the responsibility, you have to trust that it's their responsibility. It's their fault. They need to sort shit out. If it's their responsibility, they need to do it. If it's your responsibility, you have to sort it out, right? There's no two ways about it. But understand the duality of all of this stuff that I'm talking about, that it can be both. You know, it's of the responsibility of everyone to do this, not just one side. It's not one-sided. Everyone has to do that. And right now, my relationship, I've got 2 partners, and they both do all these things that I'm talking about. Every single thing that I've talked about. They respect me, they communicate, they're not insecure and jealous about it. And sometimes they have their moments and they bring it up, you know, because they don't want the relationship to suffer. They want us to all be on the same page, right? And do you know what? The reality is that every single relationship should be doing this. It doesn't matter if it's a poly relationship like mine, or if it's a monogamous relationship, or a friendship, or anything. If you respect that person enough, these things should be resonating with you. These things should be things that you do anyway. You know, they're not reserved to these crazy relationships that I'm in, right? Every single relationship should respect and grow and communicate and want to quench their jealousies because they want the relationship to last. Okay? So this has been an incredibly long video, but I don't know how I could have broken it down into anything shorter, to be honest. Like, it's such a deep subject that everyone really needs to focus on and not take so lightly. I think, you know, people are so used to handballing responsibility these days that they're not taking responsibility for themselves. But it will make you an incredibly strong human being. And you know what? If you want to be a real man or a real woman, this is what you're doing. You know what I mean? These are the definitions of a real man or a real woman to me, is people who communicate in this manner when they're in a relationship. You know, a little beta bitch is not going to do any of these things. They're going to be a pussy. They're going to be weak. Right? That's the reality. So, sorry I got a bit full on there towards the end. But I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I've been sort of waiting out the front of this job for a bit, and I'm a little bit late. I better go. All right. Have a great day, guys. I love you all. Mwah.